Thanks for stopping by once again. My name is Cheskia from YNR Recording Academy, and today I want to address some really common reasons why you're running into latency issues. So let's get started. Latency generally happens when you're trying to record something, whether it be audio, MIDI. You'll be singing into the mic and the signal will hit your headphones a few milliseconds later, and it will throw your timing off. You won't be able to properly perform. And the same thing is when you're trying to do some MIDI, trying to play some MIDI out, you'll hit a key and that key will only come back, the sound will only come back to you a little bit too late, and then it just renders the performance just, you can't perform. It's really, really aggravating and really frustrating. And it happens to a lot of musicians and a lot of engineers that are trying to just record the music. This problem of latency just gets in the way. So let's talk about why this happens and some reasons, some ways you can try to avoid it. So the first reason why this may happen is that your buffer settings are just simply set incorrectly. And this is probably the most common, especially for the newbies out there. The buffer size, usually located in the audio settings of a DAW. In Pro Tools, it's under Playback Engine. In Logic, it's under Audio Settings. The buffer size usually starts at somewhere as low as 32 or 64 and goes all the way up to 1024. So the real rule, the hard and fast rule, is that when you are recording, try to go as low as you can, and when you are mixing, try to go as high as you can. Basically, what a buffer size means is that the higher the buffer size, the more computer power the DAW will have at its disposal, but at the expense of latency. So the lower the buffer size, the less latency you'll have, but the less available computing power you will have at hand. So how low you can go during recording highly depends on the computer you are using and the session and how heavy the session you're in. So just try to go as low as you can before you start getting errors and crashes. Generally, this might be 256. Some people might be able to get away with lower than that, 128, or even lower than that, 64. Again, this all depends on your system settings. But when recording, try to go as low as you can afford, and when you're mixing, just put it on 1024. You'll get the maximum computer power available to you. The next reason why you're probably getting latency is because you have a very heavy session. So if you have a lot of heavy session, a lot of effects on in your session, and your computer is not quite able to process everything fast enough, you are going to get latency. Let's go back to why latency happens real quick. I know I forgot to mention this before, but basically what's happening in latency is that you're inputting a signal and it's taking time to get out of the interface. Again, there's an input and then there's an output. So it goes into the computer and then comes back out, and that process, once it's in the computer, is taking too long for your ears. It's taking a few milliseconds just too long. So you're gonna say something into the mic and it goes into the computer and then it comes back out into your headphones, and that process is probably just taking too long. And that's because, again, your buffer size, like I just mentioned, your computer has more power at its disposal, but it's taking longer to do. So that's why the buffer size would help it, is because it's basically saying, don't make so much computer power available. Let's just deal with the bare minimums, and therefore this process of input and output will go faster. The same thing applies when you have a heavy session. So when you have a heavy session, this process of going in and going out might take longer than if you didn't have anything in your session, or you just had a couple tracks with no plugins. So what I suggest when you're recording, if you're getting latency, even at a low buffer size, is deactivate the plugins. Bypassing will not help you, especially in Pro Tools. I'm not sure how it works in Logic. I'm pretty sure when you turn off a plugin in Logic, it does completely deactivate. But in Pro Tools, you'll have to actually deactivate it. And in order to deactivate, instead of just pressing Command click, which is bypass, you'll have to do Command and Control click, and that will deactivate the plugin. And Pro Tools will basically, it will stay there in the inserts, but it won't be active. And Pro Tools will basically not even see it. So the process of the input and output will get faster. You won't have to, stop by all the plugins and process and then come back out. Move on to the next reason, is that you are probably dealing with some routing in Pro Tools. Not sure how this works in other DAWs, but definitely in Pro Tools, if you're routing to certain places, if you're routing to an aux track or routing to a folder track, that takes latency power, that takes computer power, that is definitely latency taxing. So make sure that all your outputs, for the recording's sake, or at least whichever tracks you want to be hearing and recording while you're recording, are mapped straight to your monitor out, and no stops in between, no buses, no mix buses, and no folder tracks. The last and final reason is a little bit painful, but this is probably due to your computer. Your computer just can't handle the tasks you are putting it up to. So if you have an older computer or a computer that you didn't spend too much money on, you're likely out of luck. This might be a good sign, because again, it's a little bit bittersweet, because you're kind of outgrowing your computer, but at the same time you have to get a new computer. So outgrowing is good, because that means you're moving on to the next step. Your sessions and your tasks that you are doing in the studio are just not, your computer's just not living up to those expectations, which is good, because that means you're advancing as an engineer or a producer. But it's also a little bitter, because now you have to go out and buy a new computer with more RAM, heavier processor. So this is really a bittersweet cause of latency. But let me assure you, once you go ahead and gather the funds for a new computer and actually go ahead and purchase a new computer, if you were getting latency or you were getting errors and crashes, you will be in, like, you will have such a relief off the back of your shoulders. I spoke about this before in a previous video. If you're looking to upgrade a piece of gear, if your computer is slowing you down to any capacity, I think that should be the very first upgrade that you should do. So those are the top few reasons of why you're getting latency. I just want to go back to the plugins one more time. I think that was number 2. Plugins can be anywhere on the session. It could be on the vocal track, and especially on the master fader, all those, the vocal track that you're trying to record, or the MIDI track that you're trying to record, and the master fader in the session, those are probably going to impact the latency the most. But plugins can be anywhere in the session, can be causing latency, but those will be the first to deactivate, the track that you're actually recording and the master fader. So those are the reasons why you're getting latency. I really hope this helps you out, and if it does, leave a like or a comment or subscribe. And before you go, I just want to give you my free home studio gear guide. So if you are looking to upgrade your home studio and you're not exactly sure what gear to, upgrade, and you're within a specific budget, don't worry, I got you. I put together an entire PDF showcasing all the gear that you would need to start a home studio or upgrade your home studio, and has a few different options for a few different budgets. So you will likely fall into one of those. Go ahead and download it for free. The link is in the description, and until next time.